I'm calling to order the Board of Library Trustees meeting, regular meeting for Thursday, January 26, 2023. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Library Trustee Moreau,
Here.
Library Trustee Petty,
Here.
Library Trustee Silvera,
Here.
Vice Chair Joshi,
Here.
and Chair Felguth.
Here. Thank you. We have two items on the consent agenda: approval of the December 15, 2022 minutes, and a consent item to request appropriation of $218,597 in grant and donated funds to the 22-23 Library Trust Fund budget. Unless somebody wants to pull either of these items off for discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I just have a question
Sure.
on the Stronger Together. What's the breakdown? There are 3 items listed. The funds will go to, let's see, there's the renovation of the area, expansion of the collection, and training. Do you have an idea in your head of what the
Hold on. Give me just a moment. What I can tell you on there, Vice Chair Harish, is that let me just trying to pull this up real quick, is that what we run into with this is that some of these things, I didn't put it in there as exact, because some of this funding with the state, if we need to adjust the funding between funds, it's possible. And I didn't want it to go into a document where basically, let's say there's a certain amount for staffing, and then we get pulled back that we can't make changes to the staffing or collections on there based on that.
ballpark?
Ballpark.
80, 20, 10, something like that, no?
Yeah, give me just a moment. I'm just going to pull it up. I just didn't have that right on there.
Well, we can take it up later.
Yeah,
Just let me know, and we'll proceed with the meeting.
Yeah, there it was. So it was supplies, material. Some of these things are like carpet. These are things like equipment, supplies, material, 87,000, equipment, 71,000, salaries, $10,000, consultant fees, $10,000, services, $10,000. So it's a mix of different funds throughout other parts of the area. So it's because it's for 0 through 5. So it's kind of some areas for staff. The staffing, for example, the salaries is additional part-time staff to help support children's services.
Yes.
And other parts are, consultant fees for different trainings for staff, and supplies, materials. There's a bit of the collection and, carpet and that kind of stuff. And equipment are things like computer desks for families and kids. And all those, that's generally what the breakdown is there.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And that's for the Stronger Together Early Learning Hub grant.
Correct. And
when will work actually begin?
Well, I just had a meeting with the Stronger Together team yesterday. So we have not received the money yet. We're going to receive 60% of the money as a check in the coming days. They're going to be mailing out a check. So then I have to work with the city, with Public Works staff, because once we now have all the funding from our MC Gives campaign about figuring out how do we need to do this based on our budgeting thresholds, what we can go out for bids and what we need to wait on. So we should be moving down pretty soon, but hopefully the sooner the better.
So before our next meeting in February, it's likely you'll have some update as far as, the bidding and looking for vendors and specifying, exactly what furniture we want to buy and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I will, yeah, exactly. And I will say there was the Friends and Foundation have been active in this and kind of helping out for that whole area for the MC Gives campaign too. So we'll be meeting with them and a designer pretty shortly too.
Okay.
I just had a quick question. So it's a process question, really. So the money is donated to the library, but we have to ask the city to put it into the trust fund. But the city, I'm assuming it's pro forma, because the city can't take this money and do something else with it, right? They've got to put it in the trust fund for you.
Yeah, so my understanding is based on just the role of the Board of Library Trustees, that because of your dealing with the budgets for the library specifically, so that's why you're approving the funding to go in there. That's where it wouldn't go into other things, because then the state wouldn't be, the state is sending it out to, like, you know, the Monterey Public Library, right? And so that's where it's going to go to. It's going to go to us and for us to spend.
Right, so we just kind of pro forma approve it, but now the city council also has to approve it, which is a kind of an interesting twist.
Well,
So,
they're the
I-
pro forma. We're the ones that actually decide if we like the potential use of this and the proposal, and, you know, is it gonna be enough and all that, but the city's just a pass through.
Right, so they rubber stamp it. Okay, thank you.
At least that's the way it's been for the last, whatever, how many, Francesca? 10, 11 years I've been on the board?
Yes.
Again, I will entertain a motion to approve the 2 consent items.
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. All those in favor?
And Chair Falgout,
Roll call, yeah, sorry.
no problem. Library Trustee Moreau,
Yes,
Library Trustee Petty,
Yes,
Library Trustee Silvera,
Yes.
Vice Chair Joshi,
Approved.
and Chair Falgout.
Yes.
Thank
All righty, thank you. Public comments. This is the time in the agenda for the members of the public to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any subject which is not on the agenda. Any person or group desiring to bring an item to the attention of the library board may do so during public comments or by addressing a letter of explanation to the library director and sending it to the library at 625 Pacific Street, Monterey 93940. Do we have any public comments?
I will share with anybody viewing this that if you're not joining us in person here in the council chamber, there are 2 ways to virtually participate. You may directly join on Zoom Gov from your computer or mobile device, or you may call into the Zoom meeting. To join the Zoom meeting, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. To call in by telephone, dial toll-free 833-588864. Enter meeting ID 161-352-8864, followed by the pound sign. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. We do encourage members of the public to join our meeting via Zoom. You will be connected live in real time to the meeting. No public comments at this time, Chair Falgout.
Thank you. All righty. Well, then we will move on to item 3 on the agenda. First reading of proposed revisions to Library Board Policy 105, use of library meeting rooms. Brian, I assume you're going to take the lead on this.
Sure, yes, I will. And so I will just to share on this, you have in the packet if you're looking at the packet, the second item on there, the ones that has the bolder font, that is the draft there, right there for the policy. So this really highlights a couple needs here for the library, just in terms of what the needs are in here. One is that we're getting a lot of requests again to use the community rooms from different groups in our community. Sometimes they're nonprofit, sometimes they're not nonprofit. Sometimes they are, you know, community homeowners groups, or they can be, you know, just local clubs and groups that have not had nonprofit status. You know, they could be game, you know, puzzle clubs and chess clubs and things like that, which were people coming in and want to use the room. So sometimes it's smaller groups, sometimes it's larger groups. They're also having people that want to meet in person and do interviews, or doing like a one-person Zoom kind of filming on there. So a couple of things came up during our time to really look at what are we going to do here in the you know, here in the library for this project. So that started the question of us reopening our meeting rooms and working with our team here about what we would need to have this done and to expedite the use so that the staff with limited staffs actually handle the requests that we have for using the rooms on here. So with that, we can go through bit by bit, but I can also just kind of go over in general what we have. So we have, the qualifications and priorities for use. Programs and meetings hosted or sponsored by the Monterey Public Library. Programs and meetings hosted or sponsored by the City of Monterey. And then programs and meetings of an informational, educational, or cultural nature sponsored or hosted by other government agencies, nonprofit organizations, community groups, or individuals. So those basically means there's widens open who can actually use on our community rooms on there.
Yeah.
It breaks out a little bit on here on the new one, just on publicity to basically clearly state for folks that this program is not sponsored by the Monterey Public Library, which does not endorse the viewpoints of meetings or meeting room users. So if people are creating a flyer and putting our site as the location, this is basically saying you're not going to put us as the host. You can't put us in as a co-host because we can't always say that we're going to agree with, what you're doing. This isn't, we don't have not sponsored your meeting right there. So that's where we have on that side on the publicity and requirements. And this is outside of the city or library. So this does not include like, the library hosting something like last night we had Ohana came in and did a presentation. So we did it after hours. So that's fine because it was with the library. And this also just an FYI, our friends in foundation, we are finalizing our MOU with them. We're working on that. So
Good.
that would have things regarding after hours and our other events like we do for chocolate and more. But one of the things is to have somebody who signs off on booking the room to make sure that they are going to take ownership of it. So it's not somebody booking the room and then transferring off and not telling us, oh, this person's going to be here to actually reserve the room. These are basically, the meetings need to be non-commercial in nature, and there's no admission fee, commercial transaction, or direct sales are permitted. And so this is important. I asked for us working with our city attorney to highlight this, is that an exception that presenters may sell their works to attendees during library-sponsored events, and pursuant to the MOU with MPL Friends and Foundation, the foundation may fundraise and receive donations. And it was important for me to put these in there because this basically says we didn't have something in there before that said our program presenters, like our authors, would be able to come in and sell their books. And I think, if you said that what we said is was non-commercial, but we allowed authors to come in and sell their items. So I think clearly stating that a person has that right to sell their items on there, pending they are part of a library program. And then the Friends and Foundation have the authority to fundraise from that site as the other exception in the room. But otherwise, we could basically tell folks, you can't conduct business in this room without some kind of agreement. Still, meetings are open to the public, and no individual or group may use meeting rooms more than 2 times per month. And this is just to limit our we're going to be controlling how many times people use it so they're not monopolizing our community spaces. And we have the indemnify, defend, and hold harmless the city, and that language will be put in the booking platform so that people just click yes, I agree, and put in their name so that they know that they have that's that risk management languages. The other part on this, so yeah, this is pretty much, there is a part about certificate of insurance, and this is something I'm working with our, it's in that last point before implementation and enforcement. Insurance may be required for groups in an amount established by the library director in consultation with the city's risk manager. I am working with our risk management and looking at possibly groups of 50 or above needing a certificate of insurance. And we use a certificate of insurance for some of our different museum bookings of programs. So this is kind of standard practice for us, but I think for us, it would trigger like you need insurance to hold this larger event that you are holding here in the community room. So with the majority of events, it would just be the hold harmless agreement, sign in, and access the room, and we would have this on there. That's primarily, it's kind of a big kind of speed through, but happy to answer any questions on this policy.
Marcia?
Just a clarification. So if I wanna teach a yoga class twice a month for the whole year, can I come in and say, I'm John Jones and I want to teach a yoga class, a private yoga class, for which I won't charge. And book it or because it says 2 times a month. Will you be doing those kinds of things? Because I would think that would kind of book up the room pretty fast.
So you would have to be open to the public. So you couldn't do it as a private event. You would have to have a public event that, you, as you're going to be booking the room, and that you could book it for a group, and then you would have it allow other members of the public would be allowed to come into the room just like now to use the room. So
Okay.
you can't say like, I'm going to use the large room. The solarium, the thought is that would be more of a semi-private room where people are using that more off, and they're using that room to really book smaller groups. It's a study group or something like that. But the larger room, yes, if you came in there and you're like, I'm going to run a community yoga group, and we run it, we need a place to do this, you would, log into the system, book that, yes, we waive, we agree to hold the city harmless on anything that happens inside the room. And then you register with it, and you could use it up to 2 times a month based on the availability.
Okay, so I'm just thinking, I'm just trying to think out loud. If a lot of people do that, and I say I want to do it for the next 5 years, I mean, do you put a cap on on the other end or something for 1 year or something like
Well-
that, so that you don't end up with all these groups meeting regularly and taking.
Right. So the
members.
way that we have this system set up, because it used to be that it would have to manually kind of review everything, is that for the community room, there would be a 5-day period lead time before you can confirm something. So you couldn't do something, say, I'm gonna use it tomorrow. We need 5 days minimum and 42 days, so 6 weeks maximum. So you couldn't go in through and basically say, I'm
Mhm.
booking twice a month for the remainder of the year, and tell people
Right.
like, hey, every Saturday you're coming to
Right.
the library or something like that.
So it's
Because
a
what
6-week period.
right, and so what that does for us is that also gives us the ability to plan out our events, because the library staff and the friends of the library, we're gonna know what our events are, plug them into our calendar ahead of time, and then what's left over is more kind of for
Right.
community use within that time. But it gives us that 6 weeks of planning time ahead of time for us.
That's what I was getting at. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Harish?
Yes, I'd like to suggest slight change to the wording. Where instead of saying nonprofit, change it to not for profit, because nonprofit is something specific. You have to go through this process with the IRS. But many small groups are not for profit.
So I'll just say on that, that was my, I think that's what's included in the community groups. So I think I can talk about that with the city attorney too, but I think that
Okay.
was the thought about the not-for-profits and nonprofits, right? I know exactly what you mean on that too.
Bob?
Thank you. If there's anybody else that has a single question, I'll let them go first, because I have so many questions and issues with this that, well, maybe I'll stimulate some ideas, but Marcia's question is a very important one, because before we stopped having meetings due to the pandemic and everything, I mean, events, the calendar got so full with some groups signing up for the same days, month after month after month after month, that, and I know this firsthand, because there are many times when Inga and I, or Victor and I were trying to schedule a talk, say that I was going to do on Medicare, and it was impossible because all these groups had so far in advance scheduled the rooms that they just weren't available. And besides 2 times per month, which I think is excessive, I think we should be saying a group or person representing a group, because that's another question I have here. It says no individual or group can use it more than 2 times. Well, let's say I'm a member of a group and the sign up under the group's name once, And then I could sign up under Bob Petty once as an individual and invite all my friends who happen to be group members. And, that would be a way of end running the system. But I think besides having a limit of maybe only once per group or representative of a group per month, we ought to have a limit. And if I understood you, Brian, you said that they couldn't reserve again and again and again, except every 6 weeks.
So
That means
rolling
every-
6 weeks.
Yeah, so that means every 6 weeks, the same party could go in there and tie up a room twice a month, and an individual signing up as an individual who happens to invite his friends who are also by accident members of that group, tying it up even more often. And I just think we need to operationally have a more especially when it's self-registration. I didn't even know that it was self-registration before. I thought we had staff members receive the request for the room and then fulfill the request if the space was available. And I would much prefer for us to have that level of direct staff oversight.
Can I address that real quick before you go into the
Yeah.
next point?
Yeah,
So
please do, because that's
here-
an operational question more than
Yeah.
something else.
So what I would say on the first part about the one time, I mean, even if you have a 2 times or 1 times, you're still coming up with the same problem and the same question, which is how many people are coming in from the group. The 2 times per month is what we're running into is I don't think everybody's going to use it. And I think there's going to be specific days in the month because we are open until 6 p.m. We are not open in the evening. And so a lot of those evening kind of people wanting those nights, we're not addressing those, and Saturdays are going to be the ones that are the hardest to be done. What we would do on any kind of form is what is the nature of your program? So anything with the community room actually does get vetted by library staff. It doesn't automatically get approved. Solarium would, because it's a smaller kind of a booking, it's a smaller space. And that way we can have people book it and use it for the day for 2 hours. But what we don't want, I can tell you for this, is I don't want somebody coming in every single day and saying, okay, this is my office, 10 to 12, come in, come meet with me in the library. And my past library, we had that with people that were doing, working with homeschoolers, people that were tutors that would come in and say, okay, 3 to 5, my hours were at the library, and they knew the system of how to book it ahead, right? They knew how to do that. And the students thought they were our partners. The students thought that these people that came in there from 3 to 5 were actually hired by the library as their tutors, but we were not, right? So I'm aware of what you're saying on that. So I do think it's finding what's in there, what's the purpose, and finding those patterns. And if you go in there, you basically say to that person, hey, you are violating this policy, and we can actually eliminate your ability for future bookings if you continue with this practice. Because I think,
Brian, you mentioned something just a second ago that's not in here, and it's not like we have 2 times per month, but you mentioned use it for 2 hours. I think we need to be equally specific in our regulations for how long a chunk of time at one meeting the person can tie up the room.
that's actually in the procedures, it's not in the policy. Because it's not in this part of because it's in the procedures which we've done. We haven't gotten to that level in the policy before. And so I didn't look at having that in here. I looked at having that in the procedures the same way we did in the procedures before. Because that way, we need to adjust it to go through, if we need to go through and change that from 2 hours to 4 hours and expand or contract that, it's a much longer process for us to go through this process to extend that part of it. But the actual practical side of going through, that's in our practice, which we have on the settings, which would say you can book it because there's a booking setting for what's the padding time between your booking and the next person's booking. When do you have to leave before when's the last booking allowed? We have some of those things in our settings for our program, not so much in the policy itself, but we would have those settings, which says basically it's a 1 hour minimum, 4 hours maximum for your program.
Okay, did you say when you were giving the overview in the beginning that there are occasions when we might allow the spaces to be used after the library is closed?
just for library specific programs. So library programs and Friends and Foundation, or if the city needed to use it, sometimes the city uses like the solarium for a staff meeting.
Okay, so and it's also the case, looking at the priority list, that even after XYZ group has reserved the room, if the library wants to use it for a library event, they can in effect bump them out.
Yes.
Why are we, there's no mention of it. I don't see actually, but why in your summary, we are removing fees for room use?
Well, right now we have basically pretty much never or very, very seldomly charged that, and library cards are free to everybody in the state. And so we're basically saying this is a community program, we are a community use, and we want to encourage everybody to get a library card. So basically we're saying this room is for community use. And if we're saying in there, hey, you need to have a library card in there, this is also a way for us to track who's using the space. Because when we put it in there in the system, and let's say you have 4 emails, Bob, and you registered the same way you're talking about 4 individual groups. You may have your work email, you may have your personal email,
Yeah,
you may have a junk filter email. And if you use 3 or 4 different emails for booking this room twice a month, you can book further out. But if we tie it to a library card, we could basically say this person with this library card is booking it this amount of time. So that allows us for a little bit better tracking on our side too.
oh yeah, I understand. And I think it's absolutely essential, like you have here, that the person doing the booking, regardless of which of their emails they use, they need to do it under their library card, because they only have one and only one of those. Of course, they could use each other's library cards and do it multiple times, and if they wanted to be dishonest. But my question was, in your briefing, it says remove fees for room use. One thing I think that's been frustrating to the board ever since the city almost ran out of money a couple of years ago was that I feel that we've been sort of almost hounded to try to figure out ways to charge money and make the library into a money-making department. And we have resisted that because we kind of, at least in spirit, look at it as a free library. And but charging outside groups to use our space and facilities, I don't feel so bad about. So I'm wondering why we are, as your note here says, removing fees. Why aren't we charging a nominal fee for use of the space?
That was something we discussed as a group, and as the staff, we discussed that with the different staff involved with it. Couple of reasons. One, I mean, going back to the current policy is if the representative of a nonprofit organization reserving a meeting room does not have a valid library card, charges for meeting room use will be assessed as follows. So I just removed that part. But if we were to go forward with charging on a different level, then we either want to look at basically aligning that with the practice of something like Monterey Recreation and what they charge for El Estero or Hilltop or any of the other kind of meeting room uses, maybe not the conference center, but maybe sports center, and seeing what their usage are. But we don't have the same level of oversight, cleaning and setup and that kind of thing that a lot of the other sites do for like recreation, about setup and takedown. We're putting this on the use, and we want to have it allowed for our community groups. So if we got to a point where we said, okay, we want to open this up after hours, we want to say, yes, you can come in on a Sunday and book the room, or yes, you can stay until 8 p.m. and there was staff oversight and staff usage on it, I think that would be to me and the staff talking through it, that would be a fair assessment to charge based on additional use and additional need of the staff for that workload. So it'd be like a direct recovery of that cost. So if we said, okay, if it's going till 9 p.m., 6 to 9 p.m., it's going to cost you X amount for the library staff time and electricity, plumbing, and that kind of aspect of it. But at this time, we're not asking for anybody outside of the regular use of the library itself. So that was just the thought, is that we're not there yet.
Now, when people use the rec center, they pay low, but they pay fees to take the different classes and stuff.
Mhm.
Presumably in part because it helps cover the cost of staffing those activities. And if we're offering our library space for activities that are, in a way above and beyond the normal flow of events on a given day, is the city willing to pay extra to cover extra staff to come in and do whatever needs to be done by staff to accommodate an outside group?
Right now, I mean, we don't have the regular on-call staff that are here to do the after hours here for the library, just for that. I'm not sure about how recreation is doing it, or even if they have it open. Recreation is a cost recovery kind of a business, which is different than the library, which is,
Very much, I agree totally.
so that's, so that part about it where they do operate quite differently. But I think the questions for me rise up when I was asking staff about things like, use of the kitchen. What's the use of that for, program use? What is the use of that for another group wanting to use that? What would the fee cost? And so I looked at different fee structures of it. And I will also say that I had our intern look at the policies of fees for meeting rooms throughout our MOBAC region for which is our library consortium, as well as PLP libraries, to see what was there. And a lot of the fees came up for buildings and facilities when they held private events. So places that held more kind of private use of it, that's what really triggers the fees. And that's what I mean by like evenings and after hours, where most of these, the intent for this is that you're providing a service for the community. The library is the space. So we're trying to provide a free space for the community to enrich themselves and to interact with each other. Where if we said, hey, we want to open up this space for private use, and we want to use the kitchen, or we want to do this, to me that's a very specific use, which is outside of that adding value to the community. So that's where I see the difference. It's like recreation. You might say, I have a birthday party and I'm inviting 30 children to here, and they're all going to come here and we're going to do this. So yeah, you pay the fee, whether you're non-resident or resident fees, and you pay any kind of tax that's for, or for food or beer or whatever kind of aspect of that is, but you have that written into that policy. And we're looking at more of just opening up directly for the public. Anything people are booking, you really want it to be open for the public and enrich the community. So that's where I see it, and that's where I think it was going with having it free.
Okay, the last thing that I was wondering about in the qualifications and priorities for use section of the document, it refers to and it says government agencies, nonprofit, community groups, or individuals. How do we define a community group? For example, can a group from, I don't know, Hollister come in? I'm just picking Hollister off the top of my head. In other words, not Monterey, but how is it Monterey County? Is that what we consider community? Could it be somebody? I mean, what makes a group that wants to use our space for free a community group, in the sense of it's serving our community, as you were just mentioning?
Yeah, it's pretty loose interpretation, and for us, so I think that first off, anybody in the state of California can have a library card, right? Anybody can have a library card and be a member here, and we do have members coming from all over the area just here to use this library as well. So I think that's I wouldn't see, if as long as it has community interest to if it has interest to our community here, I wouldn't have a problem basically, or having the staff approve the event. If there was something that met with what we wanted, it was informational, educational, or cultural in nature, that was something of that nature that fit into what kind of events we're hosting there, I think it's fine. You might have a group in Hollister talking about local history. You might have somebody talking about national parks out from Pinnacles, right? You might have people talking from different things from all over the area. All of those are going to be of interest to people. Like in Monterey County has had folks, I mean, they're larger base, but there's people going out talking about the history of King City, talking at Marina Library, right? There's people, they're traveling all around about what's the, you know, I think just the expanse of this would be very helpful. So I think on our side, it's more about making sure it's not, I have a financial presentation and I want to talk to people about, best ways to, for college students to invest their money. Those things you have to be very, you have to really follow up with people about it, saying like, what is your intent? What do you actually want to do? Because that's where we get into with more of the, the program side is like, not so much where you're from, because you're a library card holder, you're going to be here, but
Yeah.
really, what is the intent of your program?
And how do you, from that same frame of reference, what if it appears that it's, say, political in nature? I mean, you could say, educational, informational, those are almost synonyms in this context, because if something's educational, it's going to be informational. But what if it's political? Where there's obviously opinion and desire to get whoever's listening to the speakers that the group is bringing to behave and think in a certain way. What are we going to do in those kinds of situations?
So the library is a limited public forum in the court's eyes, and that we were allowed to basically have different discussions here. And I think if it is something where the library is sponsoring it directly, and we want to have a political discussion of some site like that, I think it's important to at least invite out other parties, other candidates, and say, hey, we're holding a political discussion and doing this kind of aspect of it. And the same way with that, it's also just kind of following through with people and just saying, what's the intent? What are we doing? And let's go forward. But a lot of the courts, limiting use based on religion and politics, you can run into a lot of legal challenges by limiting those kind of discussions in a limited public forum. So because we have a public forum, we have more broader allowances to basically say, yes, you can come in and speak, but we are not going, you have to put on your flyer the opinions of this do not exactly match the library, and they're not supported by the Monterey Public Library. They're just using the space. And so I think just for us, it's like, if we're part of it, we just have to make sure that we're inviting people out and saying, this candidate's coming out here, and that's on our game. It's us just basically being connected with everybody going on and knowing who's booking the room for what purpose.
So a candidate that wanted to have an informational meeting to explain why certain groups shouldn't be allowed to do things that the rest of the population can do, or then what would we be, between a rock and a hard place, or what are we going to do?
Well, I would probably, at that point, I would do more reference and review. I wouldn't know right off the bat as of right now, but I would do my research on what the actual guidance is on public meeting rooms. I can just say offhand, what I would say is most likely is that person is allowed to host a meeting the same way they would be able to rent a room somewhere else. They'd be allowed to rent a room unless they were renting a room at a private business, this is a public facility in a public place.
Yeah. I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just that I really saw the temporary putting on hold of a lot of the things the library had been doing. And a lot of things were put on hold because of the pandemic and the budget crisis and all that. And I really felt like that was giving us an opportunity to, restart and redefine and reorganize many things that would be innovative and improvements and fine tuning them. And so that's why I'm being kind of picky, it sounds, about a lot of this stuff. But there are so many individuals and groups, it seems now, who are anti this other group or anti that other group or anti this gender or anti that gender, or that just because they want to present information. I wish there was some way we could sort of keep things neutral, unless it was clearly a debate situation. Then you'd expect opposite points of view to be challenging each other. But
Let me follow up with this because there's another policy on this which is not connected exactly to this, but it is something we would want to look at because that is on, and so I'm going to go back real quick, but it's actually policy 106, displays bulletin boards and informational literature distributed in the library. That's kind of connected to that, Trustee Petty, because what happens is that, for example, we've had groups that say, hey, I want to put a table inside your lobby and reach out. And I've said to Kim, you know, I think we need to update our policy on this on 106, because the moment that we trigger and say, yes, you can have your group come out here and present your information, we will have somebody that's, you know, sitting outside, you know, the street currently with a bullhorn, or, you know, walking down with big signs might say, well, you let this group in, now you have to allow us in here. So we have to really be very clear on policies like that. So for right now, what I've said is that anybody that wants to be outside the library or inside has to go through the permitting process through the city of Monterey, and then we go through that. So there's a official process for that kind of aspect for, you know, for people tabling inside the library or going outside. So right now we're just doing library stuff on the inside kind of lobby area and in front of the area.
In the publicity section, then that's good, Brian. But in this publicity section of the draft, besides making sure that in the group's materials they include that statement about the program not being sponsored by the library and we're not necessarily endorsing blah blah blah. Can we insert something that clearly excludes certain types of programming because we think it is not appropriate for a community center or a community venue to be promoting?
I can definitely ask the city attorney and things like that, because there could be things where you say the city does not tolerate hate speech, or the city does not tolerate certain things like this, and where you put that into their
well, the ones that came to my mind are like anti-women's rights, anti any ethnic group, anti-Semitic, anti-sexual orientation. I mean, there are groups that meet strictly to, you know, work up and get other people to go along with those points of view. And I would like us to be able to not permit that in our public library.
Okay. And I can look in with the city attorney and see if where that would fall, whether that would fall under a policy or a procedure. Because the procedure, when you have a booking, would basically say these are the procedures and this is what can be allowed or can't be allowed in there. But I agree with that having something on there that says that, you know, we don't tolerate this. The city does not tolerate, the library does not tolerate these things in our facilities.
Yeah, I mean, like we could have there was a series, or actually it was the same two speakers invited back multiple times because they were so popular. It was a pharmacist and a physician, and they talked about basically nutrition. It was they were talking about olive oil and chocolate, to be honest. You know, and you know, it was very interesting. The public liked it. They were invited back multiple times, and you know, the library is not going to say, well, we advocate that you go out and buy a bunch of chocolate. But, you know, at the same time, it wasn't something that we would object to because, especially because of the source. I mean, they were expert sources from the medical and pharmaceutical, I mean, as a pharmacist, not pharmaceutical, but, you know, but you had the right idea of what I was thinking of in terms of these, you know, hate groups or others that are, they only exist because they want to treat others not in ways that I think any of us would want.
And I will say the one policy that's in here that does currently kind of recognize that is that basically referencing library policy 515.
Disruptive behavior.
Yeah. So disruptive behavior in the library. And so that was something clearly I put in there to tie into this policy, because on that policy 515 on the disruptive behavior in the library highlights things like deliberate and or repeated behavior, which a reasonable person would find harassing, intimidating, or threatening to a customer or a staff member, which creates a hostile environment, including stalking, following, or staring, or unwelcome personal advances. There's different things in here from policy 515, but I think, you know, if we found a group that was in there that was basically, that was their role, was to harass or, you
Yeah.
know, kind of antagonize people, we could lean
Are
on
you
that
reading
policy.
515 now?
Yes.
Well, in addition to what you just read, I mean, which refers to things taking place in the library, I would also add some phrase that says, or promotes this, you know, in the community. Because, you know, they might say, hey, let's go, you know, burn symbols on the front lawns of all the people that belong to this other group that we don't like. And they're not doing it in the library, but they're advocating doing it in our community. So I would like to have something in there, just an extra phrase, you know, or promotes, you know, such behavior, or that would be objectionable, harassing, etc., discriminating.
Bob, are you about done? Harish has been trying to ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Harish, I didn't see
Yeah,
your
Quick one.
wall behind your hand there. I didn't see it. It's camouflage. Yes, I'm finished.
thank you, Bob. Go.
Want to know where these fees come from. Are they in need of updating? Are they old fees? Because they don't seem very high.
Oh, you mean the fees for the meeting room?
Right.
Yeah, so I think these are back when, the fees were back when we were charging for library cards. So
see.
that's years and years back when the city went to having that, and then there was exemptions for Monterey School District, you know, so there was just kind of an increase of creating fees on that side. So these haven't really been updated, as far as I know, the fee structure for this. So anything going through, that's what I mean by, like, if we were to say, okay, we want to open it up during the evening or off hours or have private use, and then looking, that's where I think aligning with the fee structure with something like Monterey Recreation, so you don't have one group saying, well, the library's charging us one fee, and, you know, El Estero is charging us this fee, and it's like completely off. Like the fees, I think, should be kind of equitable if possible, if we were to use private bookings.
Marcia.
Yeah, just a quick one. I know this is just a first read, so I guess we'll see it again next month to vote on it. But I just want to encourage you to go down that best practices avenue. I'm sure other libraries have dealt with this ad nauseum, and so you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I'm, you know, just seeing what everybody else does is a great idea.
Yeah, and I'll say, especially because MOBAC has so many academic libraries, that the policies there are really geared towards the student and faculty, and they're quite different than the public use. So that's when we were looking at that. I believe Monterey County Free Library might be updating their policy soon. They only have a couple of libraries with meeting rooms, but Santa Cruz recently updated theirs, and we went through a lot of them, and I went through new libraries. I went through Santa Clara City, Santa Clara County, Alameda County, Hayward, Oakland, San Francisco, San Jose, Santa Clara City, Santa Clara County, Redwood City, if I didn't say them already, Mountain View. Just looked up entire areas just all around, just to get a sense of like who's charging what, who's not, what the booking fees are, what the length of time for booking, all of those kind of aspects of it, to get a sense of what, you know, aligning those kind of practices.
And I'm assuming they have the same issues about hate groups and, you know, those kinds of things too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Any other trustee questions or comments? Yeah, Janie?
It's one section that was in the old policy that is not included in the proposed new policy. I just wondered why that was taken out, about using the conference room for public seating when it is not otherwise occupied by meetings.
I can speak on that because that's specifically for the solarium. And so what
okay.
that was is that what we find is that if you were going to go in there and use the room for a Zoom call or have a private meeting with somebody inside the solarium, we didn't want it to, we wanted to basically say this room is in use and other people want right now to share it. People that have been used to, we want to go back to basically saying this is a booking for this space for this public group. So this person can come in there and have it, do their job interview in peace and not have somebody come in there and say, hey, you're in the library, stop talking, you know, or it, this is it's a smaller room also. So trying to keep a socially distanced area of in that space where it is a smaller room. So if people want to use it and they know each other, that's fine. But if you're in there and you have like one table or two tables and somebody comes to share a table with you, I think there's, you know, we've added more chairs and more tables throughout the library recently. There's other places for you to go and sit right now.
Okay.
So I just think it's more about what's the purpose of using that room. And the purpose is really having a place to meet the needs of people that want to talk, that want to engage with somebody and having it and not interrupt with another, not just having additional seating in the library.
One other thing was the idea that up here when it says it's the responsibility of the person signing as authorized representative of the group to remain on the premises throughout the period for which it is reserved. I'm just wondering how that would be enforced, or, you know, it just seems like I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's not, we're not going to sit and kind of observe everybody. It's basically like you're signing the right to say basically, yes, I will do this. And we're doing our best to believe you that, yes, you are going to take ownership. But really the thought is that we don't want somebody coming in, checking in the room, then leaving, and then let somebody else use the room and then say, oh, well, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know that happened in the room. This is just for that person where we can say, in the policy, if we need to suspend somebody's use of the room, we can say,
Right.
hey, you signed off that you were going to take control of the room. You were responsible because somebody broke a table or broke a chair or, you know, carved something in the wall. You know, if something were to happen there, we want to say to that person, our intent was you were doing this. But I don't see us doing it on every instance where we're going through like, hey, where's the host? You know, what's going on? Oh, can't use the bathroom right now, or you know, you can't go outside and eat your lunch. We just want to say, like, you know, just make sure that they have some control of that space.
Okay.
Bob, before you jump back in, I'd like to ask just a couple of questions. Brian, so you envision this being an online form that people go ahead and complete, accessing it, I'm assuming, through the library website, and then there'll be some kind of review process, and then some way of either confirming or rejecting with the applicant. Am I correct in that?
Correct, yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Bob, and then I'll open it up if there's any public comment after that.
Okay, yeah. Following up what Janie was asking about, I think, Janie, you were looking at that paragraph that says the responsibility of the person signing as authorized representative to remain on the premises, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I thought I heard you say, or somebody else that they designate or something like that. But I guess we just need to know who's kind of in charge of the group. If we're not going to take up staff time to, you know, sit in on every group's meeting, we need to know exactly who from the group is going to be there and, you know, responsible for decorum and the physical, maintaining the physical quality of the chairs and everything else. Again, maybe that's in the procedures, not in the policy, Brian. I don't know.
Pretty clear. All righty. Are there any members of the public who wish to address this particular item?
No, there are not, Chair Philgood.
All righty. So, Brian, did you get the feedback you needed?
I did, and I appreciate the conversation and the discussion because I think the meeting rooms are a great service for our community, and it's great that it's, Monterey Public Library has, our large community meeting room and the smaller solarium. People are coming in here, and we're seeing an increased number of people coming back and wanting to use services. And as you've probably seen, it's, with the end of the the governor's orders regarding the pandemic in February, you're going to see more and more people kind of actively using spaces for meetings, I believe, in person. So I think having these spaces available is a great service. So I'm looking forward to having these open again for the public.
Great, thank you. Let's move on to item 4, receive report on library operations survey.
All right, that's me. Let's see. I'm not sure. Francesca, I'm not sure if I have my PowerPoint up. Do you have that available or not? If
Yeah.
not, I can populate that. Let me see.
I can do so.
Or let me see if I can find it. Let's do this.
Are you doing it instead? Otherwise,
You got it? Perfect. Oh, it's coming in. I don't know on your, oh, there it goes. Okay, perfect. So thank you. Great, thank you so much. If you can go to the next slide. So we did our survey. Thank you everyone for your patience as we worked on this, and we did send it out through Have Your Say Monterey on the library website, had posted around here, the physical copies inside the library, in the bookmobile, gave it to seniors over at Merrill Gardens, Park Lane, sent it out through the high school. And so this was kind of our results for this. We had one response in Spanish, and the rest were all in English. So glad to just get that one extra person that may not have been able to take the survey if we had not provided it. But what days are most convenient for you to use the Monterey Public Library? As you'll see, number 1 is Saturday, and pretty close after that, Monday, Wednesday, and Sunday fall in between that. And as you all are aware, that Monday and Sunday are our 2 days that are closed to the public. And then we have Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And I think Friday, that's pretty common because Friday seems to be one of our slower days here in the library. So next slide. Thank you. And what times of the day work best for you for visiting the library? And I was really interested in this slide right here, just because of the number of people for afternoon. And this is something that I think we've talked about too, about in the past, with people wanting to come here before the sun goes down quite often, and also the morning. And I think that's where we get a lot of our story times and other kind of early access in the programs. And then third, the evening was pretty far down there in my mind. So evening is, even though I think people would love to see us open 7 days a week and 10 to 12 hours a day, the highest need is the afternoon to 6 and the morning 10 to 12 as of right now. This is just like a simple yes or no question. Do you use the bookmobile when it stops in the community? Most people say no, but that's pretty common because the majority of people do visit on site. But as you'll see, you did have in your packet all the answers on there, but what additional neighborhood location would you like to see the bookmobile stop in Monterey? We had pretty much every, I did this by NCIP neighborhood, and I looked at the map and I started populating them by neighborhood. And pretty much every neighborhood had at least one person say yes. But I mean, that's not really enough to make for a bookmobile stop, because it's a lot of work for time and placement and finding a parking place and doing all the work for partnerships to go there. But our highest ones were New Monterey, oh, I misspelled Casanova, Oak Knoll, and Fisherman Flats, Del Monte Beach, and Monterey Vista and Oak Grove. And I know some of these sites we have had stops in the past as well. So these are things that are kind of consistent, where Del Monte Beach, I think during the summer becomes hard to get at, and finding the place of where we would park. Casanova, Oak Knoll, we are doing the preschools, which are currently operating in City of Monterey. And as some of these other services expand, I think we'll want to expand some of these services in our coming fiscal year as well. Then New Monterey, We do have the Hilltop, but I don't think the word is out enough on that site, you know, because we're doing it along in tandem with the preschool visit. But I think New Monterey, because you have the top of the hill and the bottom of the hill, there's kind of different areas in there. The next slide. This is just a pretty simple map about where you see where the library is located, and the red boxes are basically where we park our bookmobile in the different areas. So, you know, near El Estero, we have New Monterey. In the Glenwood area, that's where you have Park Lane and Merrill Gardens. In the NPS, that's where we have La Mesa and Montecito Park over there in Villa del Monte. So those ones in those areas where you had some of those areas right there, there was less people like Villa del Monte and, you know, NPS, Glenwood, less people asking for bookmobile stops. But like I mentioned, New Monterey, there were more stops, even though we do have the Hilltop location right now. And next slide. So there was just I just went through and looked through all the different comments on here. What library services do you use the most? And surprise, surprise, 92 people checking out books. Ebooks, audio databases. I think that's consistent with, you know, an increased use of ebooks around. Holds, I think people really appreciate having the option to place their own holds. DVDs were mentioned. Story times and events, and then bookmobile. And a spattering of other topics, but really shows that people are really interested in the physical collection here. And new services would you like to see? And I highlighted in here that I think Trustee Petty has mentioned this quite a bit in past meetings too, is that to highlight the interest in adult events. You know, there's a lot of interest out there for folks to see that they like hearing the speakers at adult events. Story times and kid events were number 2. Ebook collections increased. Seeing Seed Library and the Library of Things, and then interlibrary loan and expanded print. So I think all 5 of these are really great kind of services that we can put our brain on for the future. And which would be your preferred way to receive communication from the library? Number 1 is email at 86%, which is great. Let's see, you know, it doesn't cost us postage. So the social media, 20%, text message, which we have not really implemented yet, but I've talked with the staff about that, about text message services, and 19%. Print at 5% and phone at 3%. So really, how are people wanting to interact with us? I do think that text message is an interesting way for us to look at that. So I'll be communicating with that sometime in the future as an option. And so our age group, we had I think a good response from different age groups, pretty balanced. 40 to 65, 45%, 66 and up, 37%, 21 to 39, 15.5, and under 21, 3.5%. So all those are good to see, kind of just a spattering of comments from groups from different age groups throughout the area. And in what Monterey neighborhood or city do you live? You'll see Monte Vista up and above everybody, then New Monterey in Old Town. But, you know, people from across, all across the city really took part in this survey, which was great to see like it wasn't just one specific neighborhood buying. So this gave us even though it's not a huge number of survey responses, it's a great, you know, it's a great listing from throughout the city, I think. And we have folks from Marina and Seaside, Pacific Grove, Carmel Valley, Pebble Beach, and Prunedale that did not live in the city of Monterey that answered the survey. And so that was it's not a, we need to, I just going to go over the results and not to provide too much context at this time, because what I do see is this is the type of document and the information that as we're planning our budget, when the budget season comes up, it would help us really guide. These are the kind of services we want. These are the hours we need or the staffing that we need on here to help with that. But happy to answer any questions or any feedback.
Marcia, go ahead.
I just want to point out, I think this is great. I just want to point out that the one that's missing again is the teens, you know,
Mhm.
under 21, under 21. I think the youth, the really young kids are represented by the parents,
Mhm.
but the teens are not there. They're just not there.
Yeah, you know, and I
And
will
there,
say,
I don't know there's anything you can do about that, but when you're planning based on this data, just remember that the teens aren't there, and so they're not there to advocate for themselves.
right, and I connected with the Monterey High principal to say, can you send this out to everybody? He said, well, they're teens, so just realize you might get some,
Exactly.
some
Yeah.
joking comments or, people putting in, who knows if they'll fill it out or not. It's, well,
Yeah.
thanks for, sharing it out. That's where
Yeah.
we were trying to just get people, as much as you try to get it out there, because they come in here every day. There's a group of different people every day after school coming in here to use the library. So they are one of our core service
Yeah.
groups.
One of these days you could grab them as a focus group, right? And sit them down and interview them.
Just bring soda and cookies.
That's
or
right.
something.
Give them a pizza and they'll tell you
Feed
anything.
'em.
Right? Mhm.
Bob,
Thank you. The value of any survey or data collection like this will come out in the future when we use this information to better serve our constituents. For how long are we currently committed to the what is it, Tuesday through Saturday schedule? I mean, at what point can we change? Say we're limited to 5 days, budget wise, we still have to keep it at 5 days. I mean, I'm just hypothetically. But looking at the very first answers to the very first question, one could say, well, one of the days you take off should be Friday because that's the least popular day. And right now, that's one of the 5 that we do stay open and pay staff. So my question is, for how long are we almost like bound to have the same 5 days that we have now before we could possibly change? Does anybody know that, if there is a point in time when if we're going to change, we can change, and up till then, just sit on the information for a while?
I would probably, I'm not sure if Kim is on the call right now, but I might defer to her just in terms of, because I'm not sure what the process for notifying staff of changes to their schedule. I've not dealt with that because they're pretty much in a Tuesday through Saturday shift right now. But if there was if there was a mandatory timeline where you have to tell staff your shift has been changed
Yeah,
to X off of that. But I will say Saturdays and Sundays for the community, everybody wants Saturdays and Sundays. But library
Yeah.
jobs are quite competitive too. And so I think, to be quite honest, if we were to say everyone, hey, you have to work every Saturday and Sunday, and you don't have to at every other library all around the region, you're not going to be a competitive workforce. You're going to have a number of people work outside of other areas.
oh, you're absolutely right. But at the same time, we want to respond to the data that we have,
Mhm.
and that since that might lead us to want to reconsider which 5 out of 7 days we are open, if we're limited to 5, then that could, result in changing like the Friday, for example, because that seems to stick out. Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I mean, if you were just going to use this, you'd say, well, we'll close on Thursday and Friday because
And-
they're the 2 lowest. And even though Tuesday's a tie, the Thursday and Friday are, consecutive, and that would give staff the equivalent of a 2-day weekend, except it's Thursday and Friday instead of Sunday and Monday. But I was just wondering if we had a time frame by which or we would need to put up or shut up. Continuing with that, there is not insignificant interest in evenings. It would be nice if there was at least one evening when we were open past 6. And I realize this is staffing and scheduling issues, but just to voice an opinion, it would be nice if there was even just one evening when we were open past 6. In question 4, where you talk about additional neighborhood locations, and you were looking at where the bookmobile goes now, those were community stops, right? Not necessarily at senior residences? Or did that include the senior residences in which location you were talking about?
This was the ... So the beginning of the sentence does list out the current sites, including Park
Okay.
Lane and
Yeah,
Merrill Gardens.
okay. Question 5, where they talk about what library services do you use? And you mentioned that events was mentioned there. And I think it's only as low as it is because we haven't had many events recently because, you know, the rooms that we talked about previously today haven't been open and available. So, you know, as we increase activities, then we'll have more events. And like, thank you, Brian, for pointing out that the interest in adult events was at the top of that list. And when we're talking about email and text messaging and everything, I think one use of text messages that would be a very welcome addition would be if, in addition to the email notification that we get when a book that we had on hold is available to come pick up, if that was also sent out via text message simultaneously. I mean, that one type of message sent out via text, I know I would find very, very helpful in addition to the email, because there have been a bunch of times I've been out in the community driving around doing errands and stuff, and I get home and I go, oh crap, I got an email from the library while I was away from home, and I drove right by it because I didn't know the book was available. If I gotten a text message while I was in Whole Foods, then, you know, I could have stopped by on the way home. So that's just one type of text message that I think would maybe be very, very useful.
Can I
So
respond to that just real quick too? Just to make a note, just because I did get a pricing on a text message service that does that, and it is compatible with Koha, with our ILS. And it's a system that I am familiar with. And so it would do that. It automatically, it does it right after your item pops in a hold too. So it's very quick, and we can set it up and you could renew your items through text. You can get a list. There's different options where you can send it out and tell people your items are due.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've gotten a quote on doing something like that already, just to get.
But
great.
does it have an opt-out?
It's
option?
all opt-in. It's you have to
Okay, so
opt-
you can.
So you don't automatically sign up all your users. It's another service that you just basically tell your users you can
Yeah.
opt in and you can opt out at any time.
Whereas the email notification that my book on hold is available, that's automatic. I haven't opted in or out of that, right? That happens. But the text message would be an additional request on my part to be in that additional form of notification.
Yeah, the emails, when you first sign up for your card, we sign you up for like email or notification. But this exactly, you could put in like an opt-in, opt-out kind of service.
Yeah, well, I think that would be great to add the text messages and an additional way of notifying people, at least of that,
Mhm.
you know, that their book's ready. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Are there any other comments or questions from trustees? If not, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments, Chair Falgood.
Thank you. So Brian, did you get what you needed from us?
I did, thank you. And I do think this is a great, as Trustee Petty mentioned, when we were going out in the future of like this kind of a document, this is the kind of thing where you want to bring back. And as we're planning for next fiscal year, we say, hey, maybe it's another half day, you know, on a Sunday or a Monday or something like that, or changing something out there that's a little bit more manageable for us to, you know, to do in the next, you know, within 6 months or so. But I think if we planned it out and as a team here, that it would be something where we could look at and say, this is what the community is really interested in. And, you know, we see these things out there and we can really move forward.
Great. Thank you. We're now at the portion of the agenda of informational reports and staff comments. Item number 5, receive library and museums director activity report.
That's me again.
It is.
So we have our children's librarian recruitment. This is for a full-time children's librarian. We've made a conditional job offer, so I'm not going to name a name until we actually get that person check and on site. But we hope to make an announcement soon. We're just going through all of the processes for live scan and that kind of work that we do on there. The terrace mural was completed by our artist Natalia Carraza and her assistant Raven Cook. So if you have not been to the library, or if you have and you have not seen the terrace, please visit. It's beautiful. We're in the process of ordering some new furniture for that area, and it's just going to be a great area for people to come out. We had a class visit here the other day, and 2 adults were saying, "I should work out here." Like, you know, you were just like, I could spend my day out here. This is great. Yeah, we discussed the content management system solution with Dennis Copeland and Andres Garza. And I'm meeting with the City of Monterey, our IT department, our ISD, regarding implementing the content management system. So what we're looking at is getting something like a content DM, which would basically have a digital content management so that we could upload our files from the California History Room. These are all, we have over 20,000 photos, and we would like to start digitizing them. You can put them in lower res JPEGs, or having in our scanning in our clipping files and making it so that people would be able to view our catalog from home. They'd be able to view all of our records from their house. So if you look at like Monterey County Free Library, they are working with Content DM. A lot of libraries are out there. Our museums uses Past Perfect, which I find a little more difficult on the public accessibility side of the public accessing the content and trying to look through. Content DM is through OCLC, so it connects with WorldCat, and you know, if there's more integration in that if you're working through that. The Friends and Foundation finished MC Gives campaign with $49,672 and 186 donors. It was a fantastic job they did. And thank you to the community for all their donations. We're gonna have a great children's area once we get this project going. I'm looking forward to that. I met with the Online Archive of California with our local history librarian, Andres Garza. And so we're adding our finding aid records from the California History Room onto the Online Archive of California website. So this is great. I mean, these are items like the Jeff Norman collection, I believe, which are Big Sur photos, and the Wing Chong Company Grocery and Squid Industry Records collection are the 2 we started off with finding aids. But the reason these are important with Online Archive of California is historians look there to find out where history records are throughout California, different public libraries and museums. And California History Room did not have any holdings there on the Online Archive of California. It is free for us to use and to list and link. And as we build out our digital content, we'll be able to link out to there. But this way we get more historians knowing about our California History Room. So I'm really excited about us building that out in the content there. And we've been working on our California Revealed. Our digital collection is going through all of the negatives, getting them prepared to ship out. The Black Gold California State Library grants. This is the Stronger Together Early Learning Hubs. So that was the one we talked about earlier. Just got the confirmation of that during New Year's. That was great. The finalized mid-year budget revisions for the library. So this was not asking for any additional money. This was just shifting money from one fund to another. And this is through the City of Monterey. So what we did on that is, because we didn't hire the full-time, we had budgeted for full-time library staff, you know, for the children's librarian, or budgeted for some of these other staff that came on later, is shifting some of those funds into the part-time seasonal. So shifting some of those funds so we have additional part-time hours, and increasing some funding for the staff conference and training. So there was basically where there was overages and underages, it's just really shifting, but there was no additional asks. Mid-year budget is just really fixing where the numbers are off in your current budget. So worked on that recently. The operation of the survey. You may have seen we have our new Angels, Monterey Angels note cards and stickers. We just implemented those, put those in the library store. And they have four new designs that I designed and 4 stickers that are there in our library store. And those are just doing those for fun. And yeah, and regarding museums and cultural arts, I'm working for the collection assessment for preservation grants. 2 assessors have been chosen and I'm going into contract with them. And we'll have 1 collection assessor and 1 facility assessor to work with us reviewing Colton Hall, the old jail, and our vault. And those folks are, that is probably next month. We will start on that. So I'm looking forward to that. That's just kind of reviewing how we house our collections, what our needs are there. And I met with, actually just kind of connected to that. I also had a meeting earlier this week regarding, what was it, NEDCC, which was kind of a ready or not emergency preparedness consultation through the, there was the Northeast Document Conservation Center. It was a free project sponsored by, I believe, the California State Library. So we did it over at Colton Hall just to look at how we are presenting everything, how's the building, our emergency plans, all of that. We toured the MHAA Stanton Center with groups from the Museum of Cultural Arts Commission. We're finalizing our contract for expanded path of history, and met with Corey Madden and the Museum and Cultural Arts Commission regarding the Monterey Museum of Art, the proposed changes. So if you're interested in hearing what the proposed changes are for the Monterey Museum of Art, I encourage you to watch the last MCAC meeting, where you will see a presentation by Corey Madden from the MMA about what their plans are for their different sites there. And visited the storage area with the Monterey Angels with Tess Kenny and Jordan Leininger regarding the newspaper article that came out on Christmas Day for the Monterey Angels. So with that, I think that's mostly what I've been up to since the last meeting, but happy to answer any questions or comments.
Marcia?
Yeah, just a quick question. So the diversion of the funds from full-time, that was only because those positions weren't full. That was like salary savings, but the position's still there, right? So it's not
Position is
like,
still there, right? It's
okay, so you can fill it, when you fill it, then you will get dropped down in part-time hours. That's correct?
exactly what it is that because we've spent more on part-time hours to fill, we've spent more part-time hours to fill this vacant role. It's taken longer to do this recruitment.
Sure.
So it's saying you're spending too much money here in part-time, but really we weren't spending the full-time money. So it wasn't moving the position. It was just
Just
moving the
moving it
funds
from
from
one budget line to the other. And then just one other little quick thing, the Monterey History and Art, now that they're taking over the Stanton Center, are there any sort of synergistic opportunities between the library, the library that's so scrunched for space, and now they've got the whole Stanton Center? Do you see any possible something between the history, our history room and their space, or are they just so totally different?
They've always had that. MHAA has always had the Stanton Center, and they've just gone into different kind of, they're looking at just in the future, they'll have some updates on what kind of exhibits and what they're going to do there. But I mean, we partner with them on the Mayo Hayes O'Donnell Library, because their Mayo Hayes O'Donnell, a lot of their library and their books are actually in our catalog. So for example, I was doing research recently and found the books I needed. I had to go walk over to Mayo Hayes O'Donnell to do the research for my project. But I do think for museums, on the museum side, if there was any kind of rotating show or something going on there, I think we do have a Monterey collection, and we do have some of their work. So the La Meridia sword that's used on there is actually from MHAA, is at Presidio of Monterey Museum, and one of our Monterey Angels is actually at the Mayo Hayes O'Donnell Library. So we do have different collections which we have shared over the past, but I do think that that space is basically, the building itself is really owned, and the land is owned by the city, and there's a long-term lease with the MHAA for using that space right there.
But they're going to have more exhibit space, I would assume now. No? Are they
Well, they'll
gonna,
be changing what they're going to be working on changing on that. I've asked Gary Spradlin to present at Museum of Cultural Arts Commission sometime in the future to kind of go over any kind of updates for them. And I've met with their, I guess it was at the, I don't know if there's a program manager, I forget her exact title, but for the Stanton Center about connecting about ways to partner in the future for any kind of art exhibitor program there.
okay, thanks.
Bob,
Yeah, obviously, Brian, you're not working hard enough and you don't have anything to keep you busy. And so the number of items on your list is just so tiny. But that said, it is really, it's kind of like your tentacles are reaching out all over the community, which I think was one of the things that when we were hiring the new library director, we were looking for somebody that was going to, and I think in your statement, when you were applying for the job, you said you were looking at the library becoming kind of a community center, at least functionally, if not in terms of physical location, but, functionally, and that it would be, spreading out. And I think the list of things that you have been involved with and getting the library involved with is demonstrative of that. So from that frame of reference, very good.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
thank you. The next item on the agenda is receive statistical report.
That's me.
It's the Brian show.
Sorry. But, just highlight some of the numbers. I think we have the packets here. So for anybody in attendance, I think some of the things to highlight is our customer visits over the last year from, December 21 to December 22, our main library going from 7,451 up to 9,249, and our bookmobile, December can be a slow month, especially with all of the, the weather that we've had around here. Is 121 still up to 266. Website has been down, and we'll see that at I'll say the collection is pretty static. The patron app, I'm happy to see that kind of consistently going up. It's at 505 this past month, which is great. And the number of people at the self-checks, I think having those up out there is, great to have more and more number of people using self-check and self-service services, so they're not waiting in line for a longer time. So happy to see some of those things out there. The internet sessions are still pretty consistent, where the internet usage, the Wi-Fi usage is going up. People are coming in here with their own devices. So along with that, we've added more seats throughout the library. So I've responded by adding more of the chairs and tables back into areas, because we're getting more people sitting after school. Just as a segue for this, but thinking about like internet usage after school, you get a lot of teens coming in here and often playing on their tablet or computers or their phones together, and they'd be sitting on the floor because there weren't enough chairs. So we started bringing them back, because now it's, well, you don't have a reason to really sit on the chair because there's chairs right there. If there's you have to find the best way for them to succeed. And yeah, programs are gone from 10 to 19, and we do have programs for all ages at 4, programs for adults at 5. I'll wait till that announcement. Okay. And attendance at youth programs is gone up 112, adult programs 41, and all age programs 161. And volunteers are still steady. And I will say that we're basically we're excited to look at this to see the numbers of programs go up once we get our children's library in and start doing our Cannery Row Days in the future, and all of these other things out there that are going to be really exciting for the community. So the numbers will just continue to grow.
Any questions or feedback from trustees? Marcia?
I'm sorry I'm so talkative today, but I have one question. It's really weird, the database searches, the huge drop. in database searches I could. I figured the one that says items
Mhm.
checked out at library help desk is great because more people are using the patron app
Mhm.
and those fancy new, those lovely new checkout machines. So they don't not go into the help desk. That's great. But I just didn't get that database search one. Any ideas on that?
I'm not too sure of that because I don't know what we had different around 2021. And I wonder like if it was going back, if that was on the website of just people using a lot more of holds before they felt comfortable coming back into the library. Any more
Yeah.
website visits. I want
Or
to.
maybe we lost some databases in the budget cuts. If that's
I'm sure we
possible.
did.
Yeah,
I'm sure
that's
we
probably
did, yeah.
part of it. That's part of it. And I just had one other comment, and that is on the second page of this. I'm not sure why we're looking at from 2019 to 2020. I think the idea was to look at 2019 because it was pre-pandemic,
Mhm.
and then look at
Mhm.
2022, which gave us, because
more
those years in
sense.
between were so anomalous. So I'm not sure whether just the headings on the thing are wrong, but if he's really pulling 2020, maybe you could tell him to, go for the 2019 and 2022 or 20, what I'm saying? That we're looking at weird data here on the second page.
Yeah, I would say, I think the data that we're providing here is based on what the board has asked in the future. I mean, asked in the past. And I am fine going with, whether it's just the 1 year, December 21 and 22, because personally, because I'm
Yeah,
really new here, I don't have a lot of context into pre-pandemic. I have like context about like current operations, what has happened during the pandemic and right after, but not so much in the kind of the 2019 and early 2020 kind of activities. So with that,
so maybe
This-
we can just eliminate that second page. No, Bob has something to say about that. But anyway, we should, what's here is not terribly useful unless we do something different. I'm done.
Bob?
Well, I wasn't even gonna say anything about that, Marcia, but we did ask for the earlier years so that we would have a way of gauging how rapidly we're getting back to the level that we were at in these different categories pre-pandemic. So I think for at least a while, I would like to still see the previous years. And to that point, you were mentioning the drop in the use of database searches. Marcia, if you look at the number that were in 2019, it's 13,800 and some. And if you look at the number of database searches that were in the most recent year, what is it, 13,500. So it's almost exactly the same as the pre-pandemic year, which means there was a change during the pandemic, but pre-pandemic and now we're maybe post-pandemic, it's roughly the same, about 13.5, 13.8. So that to me, that illustrates how in that ticket for that particular activity, we're back to where we were before all of the pandemic stuff screwed it up.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's useful. It's useful to have that.
So I like to look at it, at least
Pre-pandemic,
for a
yeah.
while, I'd like to look at it for that reason. Because again, like I said earlier, I still see us in a period because of budget restrictions and others, that we're in a period of sort of redevelopment and recreating and being innovative in a lot of ways. And we can't do that if we don't reflect back on what it was like, 2-3 years ago. And it's nice to, I was gonna ask, in programs, there's youth programs, teen programs, adult programs. Maybe I'm being dense. Give me an example of some all ages programs.
I will plug that in. Let me see it real quick. I'm going to give you.
Is something there's not specifically geared for one age group?
Yeah, that's what I would say. I'm trying
others-
to think of what that would be.
Yeah, give me just a moment. I'm gonna plug this.
Yeah. I mean, because the attendance from last year to this year in all ages programs was the greatest jump percentage-wise.
Mhm.
So I was just wondering what an all ages program would be, and what is an example or two of those?
Ryan, there was the puzzle exchange
Hmm.
and the winter service project, which was creating those ornaments. And then the craft bag giveaways.
Thank you, Francesca. Yeah, I was looking at like, there's the winter reading program on our calendar. There's a couple programs that are, there is a health and action family workshop this Saturday in partnership with Chomp. So that's considered an all age program. So some of these things basically where you have intergenerational programs.
Well,
And then
that's
we
the
are
key word, Brian, because, you know, the many years I've spent in senior services and state commission on aging and all that, one of the trends was to try to develop for the benefit of not just seniors and older Americans and older Californians, but also for the younger generations, are more situations and programs and events that are intergenerational, even residential communities. It wouldn't be just the old folks residential community and then the one for young parents and their little kids, you know, but that it would really be a mix. And so I was hoping that what we see in our stat report here is reflective of that, because in general, sort of in principle and in the effect of it, I think intergenerational crossover and interaction is going to be good.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All righty. Receive financial report.
All right, thank you. So we have our kind of coming in here, expenditure balances and library, you know, we have our library administration, support services, reference services, youth services, reader services. And, you know, this was at kind of close of the year where we'll see some of our reference services, because hiring some of the folks later on, or youth services, this is where, I mean, you know, having 33% of that spent right there of the actual budget. Reader services 30%. So some of these things are, you know, lower or higher on there. But as we talked about quite a bit, you know, the numbers of us, we're spending primarily from the general fund on those kind of staffing components right now. And we do have lower amounts on the library trust funds, library trust funds in our expenditures at this time. And some of those things, the library administrations are some of our admin staff that are on here working on those, where the trust fund costs are as well. But yeah, with that, I think we're operating pretty well with kind of the staff here, and I'm excited to get that, you know, youth librarian on here, because that will increase our costs on there very shortly. I'm hoping for February is our timeline for that.
Great. Do any of the trustees have questions or comments? Seeing none. Francesca, do we have any public who may wish to provide any feedback?
There are no public comments, Chair Felguth.
All righty. Then we will move into trustee comments. Let's go ahead and start with how about trustee Janie Silvera, our newest trustee. Do you have any? Okay. She looks like she may be frozen. Oh, there you are, and you're muted.
I am very much
Okay. You're
Sounds
breaking
like
up,
problems.
Janie. So, we'll come back to you if you wish, or like I say, come on over and you can your nose in on my laptop. Trustee Moreau.
And just that I attended along with Janie, the Friends and Foundation quarterly meeting. And they're heavily into preparation for the wine and chocolate event on February 25th. And it's been the practice of this group to donate wine for the wine and chocolate. So if you have a bottle of wine lying around that you'd like to donate, you can bring it in and leave it with Francesca. Okay to leave it with you? And they'll pick it up, hopefully. And I think we've come to the understanding that Janie will be the regular representative at a Friend Foundation, and I'll be her backup. So between the two of us, we'll make sure that the meetings are covered. So.
Great. Thank you. Trustee Petty.
Well, all I can say is it feels like we're moving onward and upward and outward and not looking back, and all the steps are going in the right direction. And we just need to be patient and diligent in working with Brian and the rest of the staff to plan things as we innovate and recreate and reopen and all that kind of stuff. So it's an encouraging way to start the new calendar year.
Thank you. Vice Chair Yoshi.
Thank you. Expanding on Trustee Motto's comment about the wine and chocolate. It's exciting that we're going to be back in person again. This is not going to be one of those drink your bottle of wine on Zoom. It's going to be there. And I'll be doing the chocolate wine, the chocolate fountain. It's going to be a fun thing. I hope you can join me.
Thank you.
And I hope Bob's doing his chocolate beer.
I'm not sure about that yet.
Okay, well.
The brew's not ready, then I won't be there.
I got to order my tickets still. I was contacted by a member of my community, the Casanova Oak Knolls community, who had questions about what the situation was in restoring bookmobile stops, particularly in this neighborhood. And after looking at the great survey results, I'm wondering whether more down the line, we may want to work with representatives from the various neighborhood associations, maybe some focus groups when we're at that stage where we have staffing and we have the ability to ramp up and do that. I'm hoping that we can work more with the neighborhood association groups to get the word out as far as our services. I know this particular neighborhood has a little newsletter that comes out, and I think the other ones do too. Maybe we can use them, work more in tandem with them to attract more library users. Other than that, I don't think I have a whole lot more to report other than I got back from Kauai, and so far I don't have COVID, so yay. I've been testing since still negative, yay. So I think that's about it. If there's nothing else, then I'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 5:45 p.m. Thank you.